A very, very, very disappointing G1 Climax just wrapped up yesterday. So it's time to start talking about it. And what we're going to talk about today is we're doing a tier list of every G1 Climax 35 competitor to see just how they did in making such a bad tournament. Who were the wrestlers who really stood out as being the ones who dragged down a lot of the action? And who were the wrestlers who were able to sort of rise to the cream of the crop and really make something special out of something that was just largely forgettable? We're going to look at all 20 wrestlers and rank them on a tier of S, meaning they had an absolutely legendary tournament, A, meaning they had a very good to great tournament, B, just sort of a all right tournament, C, a very, very mid tournament, D, pretty bad, and then F, one of the worst tournament performances I have ever seen. There's going to be a lot more towards those bottom three tiers than there will be towards the top. I want you guys to let me know down in the comments. Were you stupid enough to actually watch the entire G1 Climax like I was, where you just watched every single match and suffered through everything? Something I will not be repeating in the future. Who do you think belongs at what tier? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're there, subscribe, like, leave a comment, all the good stuff that really helps a new channel like mine to succeed. But having said all that, I am Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And let's go ahead and get into the tier list. So we're going to start with Boltin Oleg, who had an average star rating this year of 2.9. Not very good. But Bolton wasn't really put in a lot of main event positions where he could sort of have longer matches, which we have seen him succeed with in the past when he's facing Takeshita or Takeshita. Um, Whenever he is sort of just in that opener curtain jerk spot, he doesn't really have enough time to tell a story, really. So he's sort of just has okay matches every night. And that's really what you're looking at. It's every night was 3.25 to 3.5, with some nights when he was facing some, not so great opponents, as A Block was wont to give when he's facing, Evil or Sonata. That really dragged him down a little bit. So 2.9, pretty bad performance. I think he's going to go in D tier this year, which, Bolton's not a D tier wrestler per se, but just his performance this year was D tier. Next is Callum Newman, a little bit better, 3.1 average star rating. Still not great. Generally, I have a little bit more fun with Callum Newman. Same with Bolton Oleg. I feel like if he's put in a position where he could have longer matches and he could wrestle better talent than he was getting in A Block, he could have better matches. But as it was, I thought there wasn't really a lot to love with what he was doing this year. Just too short, not given really opportunities to flex his abilities in the ring. Question is, though, do I go D tier like Bolton Oleg because he's pretty much has the same star rating, or since he broke that that 3-star threshold, does he go up into C tier? Well, I think 3-star threshold is good, a good benchmark to get into C tier, especially for a tournament like this that is not going to have a lot of people in the first two tiers. Next, we're talking about David Finlay. What a disappointing year for David Finlay. He was stuck in A Block. I would say him and probably Yoda Suji were the biggest victims of the A Block, being stuck with just some really not great talent, having to wrestle Tanahashi, Evil, Sonata, having some slow matches with Yu Uemura and Ryohei Oiwa. I just feel like he really suffered. He had an average star rating of 3.5 stars, which for David Finlay, absolutely terrible. What I am gonna do, I am gonna put him in C tier. I'll put him above Callum Newman. And that is partially because of expectation, because I have a wrestler coming up in a little bit who also received an average rating of 3.5 stars, who I'm going to push up a little bit more than David Finley. I just feel like David Finley, I'm expecting him to have an A to S tier tournament, and it was just so disappointing that we didn't really get a whole lot of great matches out of him. So C tier for me, not really due to Finley's fault at all, because when he was put in there with Yota Tsuji and Takeshita, he did have great matches, but there's just not a lot you can do with some of the competitors he was put up against. Drilla Maloney was the other guy I was talking about who received 3.5 stars, who I'm going to put up in B tier. I think he had not a great tournament, but for where he was going into this tournament, his first G1 Climax, just moving up from the junior heavyweight division, seeing the way he was booked and the conviction with which he was booked at the beginning of the tournament, really made you cast positive light on Drilla Maloney. And while he was in there, he felt, he really felt like he was part of the field. It didn't feel like a Callum Newman or a Bolton Oleg, where they're not really at the top tier yet. They're not the kind of main event talent that some of the other people in the tournament were. Drilla Maloney really felt there. He really leveled up in this tournament. So even though he only had a 3.5 average, which for the block he was in was honestly not great, I do think that he was very impressive and sort of made the most out of some of his performances. Next, we got ELP El Phantasmo, average star rating of a 3.2. That's going to put him in C tier behind Finley. We'll try to maybe keep him in numeric order. That seems like a decent enough way to go about it. Not a great year for ELP. He had a great match with Zack Sabre Jr., a great match with Takeshita, and then just a lot of nothing. Like not having good matches, even with people who you might expect him to have some good matches against. Like he's had good matches against Great Khan this year. They had a total stinker in the tournament. Him versus Shingo wasn't really that good. I'm really struggling to remember anything else he did of substance in the tournament. I really like ELP, but this year I just feel like he didn't do anything, and he was in the better block. He was in B block, so you would expect him to do a lot more with what he's given, but he just didn't really. And he's not really presented as a threat either. Like he was towards the lower end of point scorers, so there's that. He never really got maybe opportunities to be credible in the tournament, and maybe that's affecting my view of him a little bit. But just not very good performances overall from ELP. Next is Evil. Evil has a flat 2-star rating, a 2.0 average star rating. And I'm going to put him in F tier because I think being at a 2 might, depending on who the wrestler is, you might be able to make the argument it would bump him up into D tier. But I think Evil, especially for the fact that he was a finalist this year and he just had the worst match every single night, like literally the worst match on every single night, you could bet to see Evil's name on there. It's horrible that he made it as far into the tournament as he did. The tournament was a joke. Like really bad, not really that good in compared to last year and in terms of match quality. So to have Evil as one of the finalists, it was a crazy booking decision. And he goes in F tier because he was a big contributing factor to the overall negative vibes of the tournament. And similarly with Gabe Kidd, who's also going to go in F tier. Not his fault, obviously. He got injured in his first match with Takeshita, which was a very good match. And he wasn't able to compete in the rest of the tournament. If he was in the tournament, he would be higher than this. I can't honestly say he would be an A or S where I would normally put him, just because of the overall lack of substance in the tournament this year. But yeah, F tier. Bad vibes from the start. Not his fault at all. Next, we're looking at Great O'Con. Great O'Con has an average rating of 3.1, which is the same rating as Callum Newman, but I'm going to put him lower than Callum because I feel like while Callum wasn't given opportunities to succeed and he was put in curtain jerking matches every night of the tournament, Great O'Con had more opportunities to succeed. He was in longer matches, more main event positions, and just really didn't do anything with it. Great O'Con really just didn't have a lot of greatness to put in the tournament. And I feel like in the right context, Great O'Con can be great, but he really was not on form in this tournament. And he usually isn't. Um, but especially in this tournament, there were some moments that were honestly laughable. Like I don't remember who he was wrestling, but he wrapped someone's arm up in the barricade and went to kick it and just completely missed. And like that's just one spot that sticks into my mind. That's my overarching feel of Great Ocon's tournament was just not good, kind of cringe, pretty laughable throughout. Next, we're looking at Hiroshi Tanahashi, 2.9 average star rating, same as Bolton Oleg. I'll put him above Bolton. He's old man Tanahashi, so you're not really expecting him to have great matches. He was given a lot of time in this tournament, which, if he was given one or two main event positions, I'd get that. But a lot of his matches were pretty long, like much longer than they should have been. I'm actually going to move him below Bolton Oleg for that reason. Yeah, just not really that great throughout. I can't say he really had one great match, and given the amount of time he was given in the tournament, that's probably not great. But I understand why he was given that time, and I can't really blame him. I mean, I can't blame him, like maybe just retire earlier, but um, it is what it is. Next, we're looking at Konosuke Takeshita. Average star rating of 4.2. So this is going to be our first A versus S tier. And S tier for me is having a legendary run in a tournament. And I feel like if he didn't win, it wouldn't be that legendary. But since he did win, I'll put him in S tier. He was in S tier last year as well, one of the only people to really be up there. And he did have great matches more often than not in the tournament. And if he had better competition to go against, he always delivers no matter who he's in there with. It's just a matter of if his opponent can match up to him, and sometimes they could, sometimes they couldn't. Him winning the tournament, great. Him being in there with Evil, not so great. And I really like the story they told, especially in the end of him having a knee injury and sort of overcoming a lot of obstacles that people didn't necessarily think he could, like David Finlay. Did he beat Zack? Yeah, Zack Sabre Jr. in the semis, and then going on to topple Evil in the finals. So a good run, a very great run for Takeshita. A lot of great matches and a great story to put him at the winner. So our first S tier. Next, Ren Narita, 2.4 average rating. That's an F tier. Once again, 2.4. Is it a D? Is it an F? I just hated watching Ren Narita because he's not good. And him going, 10, 15, 20 minutes in a lot of his matches just really gave a bummer feel to the whole tournament. And especially when he was in B block and he was in the better block, and he really dragged down a lot of competitors. Like his best match was probably with Zack Sabre Jr., but he had a terrible match with Takeshita, a bad match with Drilla Maloney, an awful match with ELP. Just like everyone who he went up against, he dragged down. And that is the makings of a terrible, terrible tournament. I'm actually going to put Give Kid above Ren Narita and Evil just because him having an awful tournament was out of his control. Those two having an awful tournament, 100% in their control. Next, we're looking at Ryohei Oiwa, who got an average of 3.3, which will put him not right there in C tier. Not great stuff from Ryohei. I haven't seen that much of him, but I was not really impressed by what I saw in this tournament. He sort of reminds me of Yuya Yamura in that a lot of his offense is very basic meat and potato stuff, but wasn't necessarily as dynamic or interesting as Yuya was. A lot of bland matches on his part, and he was in A block, so there is that to consider. Um, just not necessarily matched up with great talent, but I don't really think he stepped up. I think he was one of the bigger disappointments in the tournament this year, just having a lot of boring matches over the course of the tournament. Next, we're looking at Sonata, who had an average star rating of 2.3. And you guessed it, that puts him right here. I'll put him under Narita. House of Torture, Evil, Sonata, Ren Narita. All of them F tier. House of Torture, easily the worst thing about New Japan this year, maybe the worst thing about pro wrestling in general. They completely sacked the G1 this year. Copy and paste everything I said about Evil and Red Narita for Sonata because I don't feel like talking about them anymore. Shingo Takagi, 3.2 average rating. That's going to put him in D tier because, Okan, Newman, and ELP had a 3.1 or 3.2 rating. So how do I put Shingo Takagi below them? Because he's Shingo Takagi. And because he's one of the best wrestlers of all time, and he just didn't do a whole lot of substance this year. We're in the old man Tanahashi era. We might be getting to the old man Takagi era because he's not really producing bangers on, on the level like he was even in last year's tournament. So seeing him just not really produce a lot of greatness in this tournament, like only having one or two great matches with Takeshita and Zack Sabre Jr., who pretty much carried B Block. It was just rough to see. Bad tournament for Shingo. Not a lot of substance to what Shingo's been doing this year, honestly. So it's a tough year for him. Let's talk about Shota Umino. Average star rating of 3.9. That's going to land him in A tier. I'm not really that high on Shota, but he's had great matches in this tournament. And maybe that is because he was put in a lot of those big match spots. The average star rating for him, like if you're just looking at the rating he got the most, would probably be 3 3/4, which isn't great, but compared to some of the other stuff going on in this tournament, fine, we'll take it. But an incredible match against Zack Sabre Jr. Good stuff against Takeshita. He sort of showed up in a lot of matches and a lot of the spots that he was put in, and was very impressive in this tournament for how he was able to hold himself. Now, in general, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but to say that he leveled up past so many of the competition, people who are presented on his level right now in Finley, Yamura, who we'll get to, Ryohei Oiwa, Shingo Takagi, Evil, these kinds of people who are at the same level he is, he just blew them all out of the water with some of his match quality. So real big ups to Umino in this tournament. Next, we're looking at Taichi. Average star rating of 3.3. It's going to land him right here. Yeah, nothing really to love about Taichi. In the right context, Taichi can have great matches. Like his match with Zack Sabre Jr. in the New Japan Cup this year was great. But when he's just in there against any random opponent and he doesn't have that ingrained story to really pull on, not so great. He did have what I really enjoyed, a really good match against Callum Newman this year. That was sort of like 8 to 10 minutes, just really fast. That's where Taichi should be if he's going to be in these shorter matches, not this 20 minutes with Tanahashi on the first night where they're just two old men sweating in there. Just not good. But, overall, fine, average, what you would expect of Taichi at this point. Next, we're looking at Yoshihashi, 3.2 average star rating. You guessed it, that is another C tier. I'll put him above El Phantasmo. Yoshihashi sort of suffered, I feel like, in this tournament because He was in a lot of the shorter matches, and normally I would say good. Put Yoshihashi in the shorter matches, accentuate his highlights and sort of hide his detractions, I guess. But when he was put in those big slots against Takeshita, against Zack Sabre Jr., he did have great matches. Like, especially in his match with Takeshita, he really, really, really leveled up, and he looked great in those matches. But just overall, not really given the ability to shine out. Just having some whatever matches with ELP and the Great Okan and Drilla Maloney. It was fine. He was fine. If this was a tournament that had more weight towards the main event scene, and Yoshihashi was the curtain jerker every night, I'd probably be more forgiving to him. But since the tournament was so bad, he just looks a little worse by comparison. And let's look at Yoshihashi. Average rating of 3.1. That's a D tier. That's a bottom of D tier, actually. I'll put... Shingo's a little bit higher. Yoshihashi is one of my favorite wrestlers in New Japan, someone who's able to consistently have great matches with whoever he's put in there. And this is the biggest indictment of A Block for me, is him being in D tier, him having a really, really, really bad tournament. Average star rating of 3.1 for Yoshihashi, who was having, when he was put in there with the right opponent, 4.5-star matches. He had like a really great match with Ryohei Oiwa, but then just nothing else. Bad matches against the House of Torture, bad match against Tanahashi, bad match against Bolton Oleg. It's the substance of the A Block that really floundered Yoshihashi this year. And it's so disappointing to say, because he is the guy who, in my predictions video, I predicted to win the tournament. And just to see him have this bad run of bad matches, consistently bad matches, akin to David Finlay in the C tier, it was just such a shame to see. I was so bummed for Yoshihashi in this tournament. Let's talk Yuya Uemura. He is in right there. In C tier, 3.4 average star rating. Once again, similar to Oiwa, just like when you go for the meat and potato style and you're just doing a lot of basic wrestling, sometimes that can just be basic wrestling, which means just having some basic 3-star matches. And that's where he was at a lot of the time. He got an average of 3.4 because sometimes he would shine out against Tanahashi or Oiwa. But most of the time, and I think he had a great match with Yoshihashi, most of the time, it was just bland wrestling. And more, that is what Yuya Uemura is looking like to me, is just a bland wrestler. Not someone who takes a unique style of just the basic chain wrestling and uses that to sort of contrast his opponent's high-flying or hard-hitting styles. He is just becoming someone who's a little bit boring in my mind. So he stays in C tier. Last person, Zack Sabre Jr. Surprise, surprise, straight to the top of S tier. 4.4 average star rating, which as the defending champ, the IWGP champ going into it, that is what you need. You need those great matches. I think he had 4 4.75 matches in this tournament. 4 matches just shy away of 5 stars, which I'll talk about in my later video where I go over every must-see match from the G1 Climax. He really was the pinnacle of greatness in this tournament. One of the only things where you can consistently get great stuff out of him. Even when he was put against Ren Narita, who had an awful tournament, they had a pretty good match together. El Phantasmo, who had a bad tournament, they had a fantastic match against each other. Great Okan, he had a really good match with him. The base level for a Zack Sabre Jr. match was 3.75 stars. The max, 4.75. So falling in that range is like the ideal sweet spot for where you want to be in a tournament like this. And it's where a lot of other wrestlers should have been. It's just he was the only one who was able to manage to have a truly great G1 performance, which is one of the, like, the second year in a row where I'm saying that about him. Last year, he had a little bit more competition with Takeshita and Finlay and Yoshihashi and Shingo. This year, he was the pinnacle. He was the highlight of the tournament, and no one could even come close to the quality he was pushing out on a consistent nightly basis. So yeah, Zack Sabre Jr. and Konosuke Takeshita were the standout greats of the tournament. House of Torture really drug things down. Most other competitors had stuff pretty mid outside of probably Shota Umino and Drilla Maloney, who I liked watching. Not a lot to really see here. In the future, I'm going to be coming out with 2 more videos on the G1 Climax, talking about every must-see match from the tournament, which is going to be significantly less than last year, and also doing a tournamentality video on it where I rank it compared to the other tournaments that I have looked at. I'm interested to see where it is going to be on that list. Genuinely, I am, because I haven't really decided its placement yet. Normally, I just do that as I'm recording the video, and by the end, sort of just go off of vibes. Let me know what you guys thought. Was there any wrestlers who I slept on in this tournament who deserve a better rap than I'm giving them? Or was I too nice to some wrestlers and gave out some brownie points where they shouldn't have been? I don't think so, because I was pretty critical in this video. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff that really helps a new channel like mine to grow. With all of that being said, I have been Isaiah from Hot Tag Wrestling. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.